Boom, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode. I have Houston's Tanica Jamison. Super pumped for the conversation. But before we get going, as always, kick it off with a wild or funny story. What you got?
Well, okay, so I want to embarrass myself.
Yes.
I'm one of three daughters, and my sisters will get a huge kick out of this. So I don't remember how old I was. I was a little bit of an emotional kid. I was the youngest of the family, so sometimes the youngest kid is a little bit emotional. Well, it was right on Easter, and some we got in a fight as we always do. Me having three sisters in one household and a single mom. There's just a lot of female presence.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got upset for some reason and I decided I was going to run away from home. And literally, the only thing I took, I think we had just had Easter, so it's either that day or maybe within the first couple of days after Easter, grabbed all my candy, grabbed a few snacks, and just started walking. And I think I got maybe down to like the basketball court. It's not even that far. My mom and my two sisters came up, and it's been a laughing story ever since. So
How old were you?
I couldn't have been more than probably 11 or 12.
Yeah,
Enough,
yeah.
enough to know that I can run away, but not enough to be smart to be like, hey, let's take some clothes, let's take some water, all the good things.
I love it. I love it. Actually, I have like a similar one. And when I left, my now brother-in-law, when I left the house, I was walking on the side of the street, came and picked me up, and we got in the car, and he's like, "Bro, do you have any money?" I was like, "No." He was like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "That's a real good question."
You don't think these things, right? As an adult, you're like, oh, I should have done this, and this, but as a kid, mine's still forming. So
I love it. I love it. So, I guess, man, let's just start from the beginning of like swimming. How do we venture down this? Were
yeah.
you one that kind of like participated in everything and that just kind of like naturally, just drew you in? Or like what was a little bit of your journey, I guess, early on?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a journey in the sense that none of my family members swim. So
Oh.
my older sister, she went to a pool party and someone went to a party and got pushed into the pool. Did not know how to swim. And that's when my mom put us in the Learn to Swim program. And like I said, I'm one of three daughters. I have an older sister and a twin sister. And we all went through the Learn to Swim program. My older sister actually loved it and wanted to join the team. My twin sister and I have a lot of energy and didn't quite listen as much as we should have. And we actually failed to learn some program. And being a single mom and having one daughter in the pool, two kids, I think we were 7 or 8 years old with a lot of energy. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
We're just running in and out of the locker room in the basketball court. My mom couldn't really keep an eye on us. And so she basically begged the coaches to give us a retry. And that's how it started. No swimming background whatsoever, just loved being in the water. Within the first few months of after learning some program, we kind of took off and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you one that like as the journey like progressed and obviously had your successes and things along those lines is like I'm always curious, especially talking with like college coaches of like was coaching always the thing or was it just kind of like one of those things that fell into the lap and then you're like, huh, I'm actually pretty good at this.
Well, for me, going to the University of Texas, so that's why I got my undergrad. After I finished my collegiate season, I decided that I wanted to go pros. I went pro for about 6 years, and within that span of time, one of my biggest role models today is my former collegiate coach, Jill Circle, and just watching her as a student athlete, as a professional athlete, and being guided by her, I really started looking into, hey, maybe this could be a career for me.
Yeah.
I consider myself being a leader. I was a leader when I was a student athlete, team captain, various leadership roles, and it just kind of just fell into place. I love swimming. I love helping. I love just being someone that my teammates could count on. I loved going around the country and doing motivational speaking, doing camps, all the things. So it was just kind of a natural progression. When I had to decide if I wanted to keep swimming or not, it was 2009, end of the summer, and a job opened up at the University of Pittsburgh, which is, right down the street from where I grew
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And I applied and now I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So now as a coach, I'm a big like talking with athletes and teams too is like defining what words mean. And like as you talk about is and it can be a blessing and a curse, I guess, for somebody like you or like leadership maybe naturally came a little more natural. It's like you just wanted to do the things, you wanted to speak up, you wanted to take charge, you wanted people to kind of like almost be charismatic where they you just drew people in to where they kind of followed you. And so now that you're kind of the CEO, so to speak, of the
Mhm.
program, and as you talk on like leadership with your athletes, I guess like how is it that you maybe like define those things for them? Because I feel like there's a lot of buzzwords out there, right? Like we got to build our culture. It's like, I don't know what that means, right?
Right.
Like I need you to be a leader. It's like, what does that mean? Kind of type thing. And so
Mhm.
it's like, how do you have some of those conversations and like what are those kind of like definitions, so to speak, like for you?
Sure. So leadership comes in various forms, right? And so when you're talking about, just the bare minimum, the basics of being a leader, that's when you start talking about the captains of your team
Right.
and what you look for and some of their characteristics. Are they a good teammate? Are they strong academically? Are they one of the first ones in the pool? Are they motivating their teammates? Like those are some of the leadership qualities that as a coach that we look for to help lead our team. When we're talking about being leaders in our team culture, one of the things that myself and my assistant coach we really strive and talk about is building legacies and leaving legacies,
Mm,
and how do you do that? And when we came in, this is year three, both me, myself, and my assistant coach. When we came in, there was already a strong foundation. I came from a program to where we were, in a Power Five conference. We did well nationally for quite a big span of time. And so when I came here and we're looking at the culture of our program, there was already pretty much set. But how do we get more out of our student athletes
yeah.
who are currently here, and how do we get more of the student athletes that we're recruiting? And I've talked about legacy and the legacy that they're going to leave. And what we talked about was, when we we're in our former conference of being in a mid-major and now in a Power Five conference, is the legacy that they're going to leave and lead. And you lead by example. You lead and show on a day-to-day basis that you're coming in, you're putting the work in, and you get the results. But also you're leading your teammates, you're encouraging your teammates, you're motivating your teammates, you're holding your teammates accountable. And all those things kind of wrapped up in one creates a good leader. You don't have to have the title of being a team captain, but you
Yep.
can be a leader amongst your team. You can be a leader in your community. You can be a leader within our athletic department. And so those are just some qualities that we try to continue to instill, because once they leave this place, you know, how are you going to manage yourself as an adult in this big corporate world or whatever they decide to do? And we're trying to give them those skill sets and those tools as they move away from here.
Yeah, it's it makes me think of kind of like my jam is like identity. And so it's
Mhm.
like it's what are you doing now to like build this person, right? And so it's
Right.
when you leave here, it's like you have this almost this commodity, so to speak, of like walking away from it and like, if you can understand and know those things that you've built, it's like going into any job interview or starting any business, it's like you automatically like know your value. And it's like
Right.
at the end of the day, it's like people are drawn towards and want to do business or whatever you want to call it, like with people that understand and know that their value, right? Like that's
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the buzzword's kind of confidence of like you can feel the presence when somebody just as a sure, like I'm sure like even when you're recruiting, right? It's like you can sit down with somebody and be like, they
Mhm.
got it. Like they got
Right. Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it shines through, and I think it doesn't even have to be swimming or I think just athletics in general, right? Like you have to have that dedication, that determination, that motivation on a day-to-day basis, because
Yeah.
for us and our sport, it's a year-round sport. It's like indoor and outdoor track. It's year-round. And so you have to have that motivation and that accountability to come in day out and not really have an opportunity to compete at your highest level for maybe one or two times per year. So
Yeah.
it's really, that's why I would encourage, employers to come and hire swimmers and divers, because
Yeah.
it's that internal motivation, because you're not going to see the results. Like sometimes you might be I don't know. I didn't play basketball. I don't know soccer, but just outside looking in, you might be able to change your jump shot from game to game. That won't happen in swimming and diving. Like it's going to take, if you took years to create your stroke, it's going to take a couple years to break those bad habits. So it's about the consistency. It's about the determination and the will to not give up.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and I guess I'm asking too is the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about like year round, especially in college, is at some level like you're going to be misunderstood by your peers, right? Like what do you mean it's not 9 months out of the year? What do you mean it's not 10 months out of the year kind of type thing? So is that normal before college too? Is that like, so is it an easy kind of thing to step into? Like once you
Oh,
get on campus, you're just kind of used to that. That is the life that you've chosen, so to speak.
right. Yeah, I mean, for swimmers and divers for sure. I mean, they did that in club, they did it in high school. A lot of the athletes that we have been fortunate to recruit are athletes who swim year round. So that's
Yeah.
not something that we brand new to them. But it is a little bit, not so much a taboo, but it's just different for other sports because you have a couple months off. Swimming, and you really can't do that. I mean, you can, but expect it's going to take a long time to get back into the swing of things come fall.
So, and I'm selfishly asking some of these questions.
Sure.
When I think of like swimming, because obviously there's like a technique to it, right? Like there's a skill set like behind it. So when I think of skill sets, and then again, I'm like trying to like relate this, like obviously like wrestling being a background, or like some of the other sports is like there's a certain like timing aspect to it. Like, is that similar like within swimming as well? It's like,
Yeah.
so if you take those months off, you kind of lose the fluidity of like the technique that you had. Is that
Oh, absolutely.
a reasonable way to put it?
No, I mean, that's a perfect way to put it. I mean, for swimmers, I mean, I can speak to the swimming side. I'm sure diving is the same. But for swimmers, so basically, I mean, the formula is if you miss one practice, it's like you're missing three practices. So just times that by how many days that you're out. Because you do start losing the actual feel for the water. You know, if you're taking, a 2, 3, 4 weeks off, you're gonna, if you're not staying in shape, it's gonna, it's gonna show. If you're
Yeah.
not even just getting in the water for like 2 grand is going to show because you're going to lose that feel. So it just takes a little while and effort to get back into it. I mean, you need that mental break. Obviously, we're not going to say you need to swim, 365 days a year. I mean,
Right,
that's
right.
Michael Phelps level, right? Where he did it for 5 years straight. But for the realistic Division I athlete, like there are breaks that are embedded, whether it's via NCAA rules or at the end of a long course season. So you will get those mental breaks, but within that span of time, don't go overboard because you're going to pay the price. And I think every swimmer has had that where they maybe taken a little bit too much time and had a little what's the best way to put it? There's a lot of effort to get back into shape, and nobody wants to feel that again. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So that's actually because you brought up Phelps is the way that you were describing like the amount of training that goes into it.
mhm.
The first thing that like popped in my head before you even mentioned his name is like for us outsiders that are not in the sport, is it hard for us to even comprehend like what he was able to accomplish in some of those Olympics? Is it like just unfathomable?
It really is. I mean, I mean, he's like the Kobe Bryant, right? Of
Right.
swimming. And, if you're looking at the Mamba, mentality that Kobe Bryant had, that's what Michael Phelps embodied. Pursuing every single day for 5 years straight, that's just determination. That's the will to continue to win. That's the will to, reach every milestone that he wants to reach, every goal that he wants to reach. Um, was a little bit overboard, maybe for some, but for him it worked, right? So
Right.
so no one can be like, hey, maybe let's not do that. Everyone has their own journey and
Yeah.
path, and that was what he chose, and you can see his results. You can get those same results without doing that, but I think what it really boils down to is just, every practice that you're at, what is your mentality? Are you
Hmm.
going in having a game plan? Are you going in on those days, like if you listen to some of his speeches that he makes, he didn't want to go every day. There are days where he didn't want to go, but your goals have to supersede that. You
Hmm.
have to put that in the forefront to really give yourself the best opportunity. Like there's no guarantee in any sport that we do. You may train for however many years straight, months straight. And then you get to the game and something happens, you get sick, you break a leg, whatever it may be. It's the character that it built. I can never stop talking about the determination, because I feel like for any athlete who wants to excel, you have to be determined. You have to have a goal. You have to have a drive. And without that, you may want to look into something else, because it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. And, nobody wants, as a coach, to have your athlete not succeed when they want to succeed, but there's a process. And so it's enjoying the process, good or bad,
Yeah.
happy or sad. There's so many things that you'll learn about yourself individually, that will always overtake doing a best time or whatever it may be. Because you won't remember your times, but you remember the memories, you remember the work, the tears, the joy, all those things, more so than the actual times that you swim or how you compete.
Yeah, I'm curious too of when you talk about like determination and like you have to be determined to I mean, there's some days you have to push yourself, right? There's certain days you're pulled out
Absolutely.
of bed and you're excited, but there are those days of, I call it like that's the difference between like motivation and inspiration. Motivation, you push yourself, and you do need those things. You have those days where you need to motivate yourself, but you also need to be inspired, right? Like you need to have something written down, that vision, or I call it a mission, right? That one thing that's like there are certain days it's like you beat the alarm clock up, right? Like you talk about it, you get the chill bumps just even having the conversations because you're pulled and drawn towards that.
Right.
And so I'm interested is I feel like I say a lot. I don't know it like I haven't really put a ton of thought into it, like at what percentage, but in working with athletes, college athletes and teams and having some of those conversations where it's like both the individual and team sport is oftentimes, a lot of times, from an individual standpoint, they almost lack a little bit of clarity, right? Like they have this like, yeah, we want to win a team title or we want to be a top 5 team or whatever the thing is. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, but what do you want? And they're like, well, like I just want to get better, right? I'm like, I don't. And so I'm curious, is like, do you have to have some of those conversations just from of like, yeah, we got the team mission, and you are here to help us get that, but
Mm-hmm.
where are you trying to grow? What are you trying to do for you individually? Because I feel like oftentimes that clarity, and then for you is like maybe they lack a little bit of the determination just because they
Mm-hmm.
lack clarity.
Right.
So I'm curious of like how often I guess you have to have those conversations just individually.
I wouldn't say it's quite often. One of the things that we do as a program, we have, goal setting meetings. So, we have that challenge to our student athletes, and we sit down for 30, 40 minutes and just chat it up. What are your individual goals? What did you learn from what you did last season? What are you going to change this season? Just different questions like that. What's your
Yeah.
team goal? What do you want to do academically? Because they are student athletes, right? And so, it's kind of like a roadmap that we
Yeah.
help provide the steps for. With our team sets our team goals for the season. It doesn't come from the coaching staff, which is another external motivation that comes from them internally, where they come together and they're setting the pace of where they want the season to go. But there are times during the season, if I'm being honest, August, September, you're getting back into it. You're doing a lot of drills, nothing really too challenging. But once you start getting to October, November, January, parts of February, parts of the season, it's pretty
Yeah.
tough. I mean,
Yeah.
I will be remiss to say, hey, everything is sunshine and rainbows every single practice. It's
Yeah.
not, because we're getting into the ball for our training. And so that's when, we as a staff, our team leaders, our captains are, bringing that external motivation. Internal motivation only goes so far. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just have to involve yourself within the team. And, it can be just the random, hey, let's go, guys, or let's go, girls. Like, we got this, last one, all those things that builds that internal motivation that, can get a little bit more out of each practice. I talked about a little bit about how swimming works. I mean, we're training for an hour and a half, 2 hours a session where you're staring at a black line, right? There's not that much interaction. Like, you don't get the visuals of, oh, here's a basketball hoop, or let me go shoot this
Yeah.
goal,
I didn't even
or
think about that. That's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So there's a lot of songs playing, singing in your head, having jokes at the wall, and when you're not breathing hard, those kind of things that or that external kind of motivation. But then when you talk about, you know, having your goals, I mean, I'm a big proponent of having sticky notes, putting sticky notes on your mirrors at home,
Yeah.
having it on your water bottle, all these things that's going to be the external motivation of this is my goal, this is why I'm doing it. Yes, it hurts today, but it's going to help me for the future. And if you're able to kind of encapsulate that within yourself, because basically swimming and diving is an individual sport wrapped up, and you kind of talk about this in a team sport, which we're going to have a team, you know, accomplishment, but
Right.
it comes down to the individual. And so as a coach, not only are we coaching and mending that team aspect, but we do have to have those individual conversations of, hey, you know, how did we do today? Can we be better? Can you be better? What could you have done better? How could you have done this set? Why are we off on our pace today? Are you sick? Are you injured? So there's conversations that we continuously have to help get the best out of our student athletes, because there is such a long period of time. But you know, that's also the fun of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
coming in and day out, and they're giving their very best, and you know, that's what brings you back season after season. Whether you have a good season or a bad season, you know that work that you're doing is going to ultimately help you get to the end goal, and then you have to set new goals. And that's like for me as a coach, like I'm a nerd in that way. Like,
Yeah.
hey, like you did this, okay, what can we do next season?
Yeah.
Like what, like you did this so well this year. You made all these changes, took all these positive steps. You know, you made these changes nutritionally, academically, in the weight room, we got stronger, all the things. Okay, now what else can we do?
Yeah.
And that's me, if I were a swimmer today with all these resources, oh my goodness. You know, it's just, it's the excitement of the unknown of what can I do, because you know, I'm giving such a great opportunity to not only represent, you know, myself, represent my team, represent my university, but they've given me so much. Like, what I'm going to take these things that I'm given and just run with it.
Yeah. It's so one of the teams is I was in year 2 with them, and one of the athletes, and she was like a diehard, right? It was like having conversations like every week and just grow, 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 grow. And like a year and a half in, it was almost like she came to me frustrated, and she was like, Ryan, like, when does it end? And I was like, it doesn't. And that's the fun part of it, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're like 21 years old. Like, you don't want to stop growing. I was like, you got like 80 more years. That is the meaning of life, right? Like, to continue to evolve and grow. And she was like, oh, okay. Because I think that sometimes they think that there's like this, just like, this pinnacle, right? Like there's this end point of like this is all that there is. And I want to feel that moment of like that ending. And I was like, no, I was like, I heard a speaker one time say, it's like, there's things that are, we try to think of them as finite, but they're infinite, right? It's like, like marriage is not a finite game. It's like you don't like win at marriage, right? Like all of a sudden you keep growing, or
right.
is like in your health, right? You don't work out for 2 years and then go, okay, I made it, right? Like you
Yeah,
continue to work out for the rest of your life. And so
right.
that's the way I think of like just growth as just as a
Mhm,
person, as a human being, as an athlete, as a competitor. It's like,
mhm,
and especially as a competitor and an athlete, because you do kind of have this allotted time, right? Even if
right.
you go professionally, it's like, okay, how much juice can I squeeze out of this lemon, in
Right.
during my time here? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love it. Do a lot of like your athletes, is going pro kind of like the dream? Again, I come from like wrestling, where it's like pro is like Olympics, right?
Right.
Where it's like that's kind of that is the pinnacle, and
Mhm.
a chunk. I think want that. I guess in your sport, kind of what more is it? Is it more of like, this is where I want to reach at the collegiate level, or do the majority have this dream and vision? Or like, and what does professional swimming even look like? Is it just Olympics? Is there, competitions, year round, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of facets to it. You know, now there are more resources that are provided to swimmers who want to make that decision. You know, competing professionally within the United States is pretty challenging. You
Yeah.
know, during the time that I did it, there weren't that many that were doing it. Um, but there were a lot. But now if you're looking at it in the scope of, 2024, the hard thing is, if you graduate, it's 2024. So if you graduate in 2022, you still have 2 years if you want to make an Olympic team. So you have
Yeah.
no choice but to go professional. And so there are different clubs that you're able to represent that will pay you. You can go and do motivational speaking. If we're so lucky to, now that there's NIL, you
Yeah.
may already sign with a company in college, and you're gonna represent that company outside of college. Our team, we're embodied with, we're pretty much half athletes from the United States, and we have half athletes from that are international. And so there are more opportunities, I would say, internationally to go professional
Yeah.
as opposed to being within the United States. I mean, um, you have to be at a pretty high level. I mean, you can
Yeah.
continue some as long as you want. You can, work and be a professional athlete, which a lot of people do. But if you're looking at this as a career,
Yeah.
you have to be,
The 0.01%.
yeah, it's pretty tough. I'm not saying it's undoable, but
Right.
I wouldn't say that that's a pinnacle for a lot of, swimmers at this
Yeah.
level. But swimming is so fun. Why wouldn't you go professional? Like, why not continue? So,
Yeah.
so I, like once I'm like, hey, it's pretty tough to be professional and actually get paid for it. But why not? Like, if you're not getting paid, just go do it, because working sucks. Like being an adult, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's hard. It's really challenging. So just enjoy this ride. You won't have this ever again in life. If you can do it a lot longer, do it. If you want to stop and hang up your goggles, do it. But if there's that opportunity, take it, because this opportunity will not come around again.
Yeah, yeah. So how have you now that you're an adult, I think, right? Like
Sort of,
a
yeah,
little bit still. Are you
yeah,
like me? It's like everybody's like, dude, you're an adult. I'm like, I still act like I'm 15. It's okay.
yeah.
Um, so how have you like balanced keeping the fun in life, the enjoy, the you time, plus like being successful at like what you do? Because I think that with anything, right? Like there's a certain amount of time and attention you have to do. If you want to be in that 1% and whether that's as a competitor, or I mean, you're still kind of a competitor. It's just
Right.
just a different role, so to speak.
Mhm.
But it's the same of like I still want to have a little bit of fun sprinkled in and like take
Yeah.
care of me and do my thing. So what does that look like for you?
Well, for me, for a good portion of my coaching career, yeah, I was married at some point. I'm no longer married, but that's okay. But the great thing that came out of my marriage is that I have a child,
Yeah.
and I have a 4-year-old daughter going on 5, who's really going on 16 now. So my lens now is completely different,
Yeah.
than it was 6 years ago when I was childless. And being able to have my daughter, who is my I mean, she said it, I say it, she's my best friend.
Yeah.
Even though she's 4 years old, just to be able to speak into her life and just watch her grow from being a baby to now going to kindergarten, this August, it's definitely eye-opening as a full circle of life, right? My joy is, taking her to T-ball practice, taking
Yeah.
her T-ball games, going to her basketball games, like all these things that she's doing. That's where my joy comes from. It puts into perspective that I can leave, work at work and go home and be a mom. Obviously I'm supported by my family, who really helps me in that sense of being able to take care of my daughter when I go to morning practice or different things, or if I'm traveling, she's able to stay with her Mimi and her Pawpaw. So,
Yeah.
I'm blessed in that sense to be able to have such a community of family that's surrounding me, and to have my daughter be able to come with me to practice and just see these 18 to 23-year-old women, doing their passion, who are just good people who love being around my daughter, and she's able to see that. So when you talk about the joys and what I do, that's what I do, just
Yeah.
trying to be the best mom that I possibly can be, and showing up whenever I can, as much as I can, so that my daughter, when she grows up, she knows that, her mommy was always in her corner, supporting her, paying for everything, which is a hard thing.
I
Watching her have
feel
my
that.
paycheck.
I
I mean,
feel it.
I pay a mortgage, and I pay a mortgage for her daycare. So when she goes to kindergarten, I'm going to be singing. I can't wait. But no, I mean, it really does put life in perspective, and really she challenges me every day to be the best person that I possibly can be, because I want her to have a life of love, of support, of joy, and of hardship. You know, she
Yeah.
has to
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
how to go through this life, and everything's not going to be easy. Just because mommy was able to provide these things, you also have to understand how to be a good person, you know, be a good friend. If you want to play sports, be a good teammate. You have to challenge yourself academically. You know, you don't have to be an athlete, but if you're going to be at my house, you're going to do something. You can be a math
Something. Yeah.
in a club, something, do music, just to keep herself occupied and to continue to have that growth in her mind. So,
Yeah. What's the biggest? So I have a, she turns 2 next weekend. So I have a
okay.
2-year-old.
Uh,
What's the biggest, this is so vague, like the biggest thing that you've learned like through motherhood, and I'll give you like why it comes to my mind is like for me, I would say prior to having a child was probably like the most impatient person like ever, right?
mm,
Like it was just
mhm,
like, no, now, like I gotta even, and then I'm still a little bit like that, but like once I had her, it's like I can literally like I can be so I didn't know I was gonna be able to, right? But like I think I
mhm,
just had to learn, right? It was one of those
right,
like back against the wall, you are going to learn.
right,
Of like just being patient and like how to
mhm,
speak to her and just have those conversations because
mhm,
we're learning to talk and the brain is developing and all those things.
mhm.
So what's that just from a personal standpoint, kind of like one of those pieces that she's been able to like teach you?
Patience is probably number one.
One, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you're so used to, you know, doing things your own way and doing it at that certain time. You know, how when you have children, you know, you have to plan extra time so that you can actually leave on time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when they're sick, they don't know how to communicate, especially at, you know, 1, 2 years old. They don't know how to communicate what's wrong, what's you know, what's hurting on their body. Do they are they have a fever? Like all these things. And so it's really taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and just going with it, because
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
day is going to be different. You're not going to have the same day twice. But again, it kind of goes back to just being consistent and really having to have that inner conversation with yourself of, no, they're, you know, she's 2 or she's 4. Like they don't understand. Like they're not at the same level mentally as you are. And so then it really just it makes life not so much that it makes it slower, but it slows it down enough to
Yeah.
where you're able to really sit down and think about what you say and think about how you want the day to go, or how the different things that you're trying to instill in your daughter. You know, it really, like I said, it really puts life into perspective. And you know, you hear about the circle of life, but it really does. Like you're reliving your childhood through your child. And it's really fun to see, especially once she gets 3 to 4 and starts getting a personality and, you know, having full conversations. It's gonna be super fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm curious too. Actually, 2 questions. Do you
Sure.
think that at this point, like 4 or 5-ish, does she start to? Because some of the conversations that I've had like with coaches is like I think that like for instance, like your child is in like an extremely unique scenario, right? Like you said, to like be around that level of athlete
Mhm.
24/7, so to speak. Um, do you think she's kind of at the age of understanding like of like what she's around yet, or is she still kind of like a year 2 3 like out, or she kind of grasp of like, no, this is kind of cool?
I would say, you know, when we first came, she was 2 years old, so she wouldn't understand. Even when she was 3, she was starting to get it, but now she understands, and she's like yesterday, even last night, we're, you know, finishing our bath, getting ready for bed, and somehow we started talking about swimming. She's like, "Butterfly is my favorite stroke. Wasn't that your favorite stroke, mommy?" I'm like, "Oh yes, yes it was." But she does understand now as she's
Yeah.
getting a little older. I mean, I would probably say between that 5, 6, and 7 range. That's I think she'll probably have more of a handle on it. But right now, she sees, you know, mommy on TV whenever we're at conference or NCs. You know, she sees, you know, when she comes to a dual meet, like she'll see mommy on deck, and she understands that, but she doesn't understand, you know, what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to be like, hey, she understands that my mommy is a coach. She thinks I'm a football coach. Um, so so when she talked about me, swimming butterfly yesterday, I'm like, okay, so you do understand that I'm a swimming coach and not a football coach. Yeah, got it.
Has and I'll tell you why I ask this too. Has, and I don't know how much time she's around the older kids,
Hmm.
so to speak, your other family, so to speak,
Right.
at the university. Um, but like, has that helped her? I don't want to say like speed learning, like, but like grow, understand things at kind of a faster rate. And the reason I ask is, um, my daughter is daycare, whatever, and she's the youngest, and the other ones are like
Hmm.
4, 5, 6. And so it's like you can see that like product of environment, right? It's like
Hmm.
everyone's like, man, like she's so ahead. I'm like, that ain't cause me. It's just she just happens to be around
Right.
people that are other kids that are just more developed,
Hmm.
understanding, they know their ABCs already, so she feels like I gotta catch up, right? Like
Right.
they know how to count. And so do
Right.
you feel like there's been kind of like a expedited process a little bit, just being around some of the more mature, your other family?
Exactly sure. She's not, unfortunately, I mean, I live like 45 minutes away from campus.
Oh,
So it's,
wow.
yeah, so it's not I don't get to bring her to practice as often
As
as
much,
I
yeah,
would like, or to a lot of team functions as I would like. But the time that she is here, even my athletes would say that she used to be very shy. Now she's very outspoken, just like her mom. And, she loves to give high fives. She loves to cheer on deck. So in that sense, like, being around, older women, there is kind of that growth there that, hey, like there goes, I don't know, there goes Henny, there goes
yeah,
something like athletes like that, right? But the growth comes from being around other kids. Like
yeah,
when COVID hit, I mean, she wasn't in daycare for a while. Even when I first came to U of H, she stayed with my mom and my stepdad for a year just to try to keep her protected from that. But as soon as she got to daycare, it was like she grew exponentially.
yeah,
So I think it's just the product of her environment.
yeah,
She's in her advanced pre-K class, and that came from just working with her. So it just depends. I think had I lived closer to campus and had her at practice more, there probably would have been more of that growth there. But still, the time that she does come, she just for her to be engulfed in that, it just as a mother, I really can't say enough about that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Has I know I asked you like, was coaching always the thing?
Hmm.
And we kind of went down that a little bit. Was head coach always the thing? Because it's just different, right? Like it's different
Right.
to be number two. It's like you kind of get to just hone in. It's a different hat. Like you get to have more of those, like I call them like intimate relationships, right? Where the kids can come to you and they can kind of like have a little bit more deeper conversations. But like as one athlete one told me one time, it's like the head coach is God, right? Like that's God. Like
Yeah.
and so they just view you a little bit differently. And some people like that and some people don't. And so I'm just kind of curious of, was head coaching always the thing, or was it again just something you're like, "Ah, we'll give this a try? Yeah,
Yeah. At my last job, I mean, I was there for about a decade, and you know, and I talked about this at the beginning of our conversations. I've always seen myself as a leader,
yeah,
and using that time at my first two positions to really learn under the head coach, and seeing their styles and watching them interact, and seeing the successes that we had. I wanted to at least try, put my name in the hat, see
yeah,
if I was able to lead. And now that I am a leader, now that I am the head coach of a successful program, it I do realize that this is something I've always wanted to do.
yeah,
I've always wanted to, if I'm looking back at who my role model was and, my coach Jill, I wanted to be and emulate her. And I
hmm,
wanted to have the opportunity to emulate, what she instilled in me. And, I don't ever see myself going back. There's a joy that comes with being the head coach of, having not so much whether we win or lose being on my shoulders, but if there's someone that can handle it, it's me.
Yeah.
I have broad shoulders. A lot of things just kind of slide off my back because I know where I want to go. I have a vision of where I want my program to go. I have a vision of, the athletes that we want in our program. I have a vision of just the potential that this program can do and can be. And so that has always been my motivating factor, whether I was an assistant, associate, and now a head coach, is just getting the best out of our student athletes, and providing that platform and that space and place for them to be successful. It's always been something within me that I wanted to help, I wanted to serve, I wanted to support in any way that I possibly can. And now as a head coach and being that leader and being that face, you know, it's something that I don't take lightly. It's not something that like, oh, hey, anyone can be a head coach, because
Yeah.
anyone can be a head coach, but can you do it at a level to where, there's going to be that continuous success? And are you going to be humble enough to know that even as a head coach, you're still learning?
Yeah.
You can be a head coach and, you may think you know everything. And I always say, if you're ever a coach or ever in that position and you think, know it all, that might be the last year that you want to be a coach, because you're always growing. There's always going to be some growth within you, within your program. And that's the challenge within yourself. If you're challenging your student athletes to grow and to change and to mold, you have to be the same. You have to do the work. You have to go out and, talk to other coaches, listen to podcasts, read books, keep yourself ready, game ready. I like to say you always
Yeah.
have to be game ready, because it's on us as the coaches to be able to give our student athletes the best platform. They're making that sacrifice to come and swim for us. We need to do that same for them.
Yeah. You spot on. Because I do feel like there's a lot of coaches out there. I don't know that it's done like intentionally, but I think that once they reach that coaching position, whether it's a head coach or associate or, a longtime assistant, is that growing curve stops. I had a mentor tell me, is like, Ryan, a coach without a coach should never be your coach. And I was like, that is as about as point blank
Yeah,
is like spot on. And
yeah,
so it's like I had to learn even early on, like as I would go in and talk to a team, I'm like, here's the receipt that I paid for a coach. So what I'm like preaching to you is like literally like here's the amount that withdrew from my account.
right,
Because it's like you said, it's like I don't want to say it's like this is why this is so important. And then it's like, well, Ryan, how are you? Well, I lived it 10 years ago, but like it's just not really a thing anymore, right? Like now I
right,
just want to teach you. It's like, no, again, the growing kind of never stops.
right,
And so, yeah, that's fascinating. Is I love that because I think that, and again, I don't think it's intentional. I just think that
right,
you just get caught up in, especially in college athletics, that is year round, right? Between recruiting and you're just on the road, and then you're going to all these club nationals and club events and visiting this place, and and it's family, right? Like you're trying to like mix in all these tools, and then you just
right,
again you forget. That's why I kind of asked like the personal question about you. It's like you kind of lose you, and then
right.
5 years pass, and you're like, damn, I hadn't read a book.
Yeah, yeah. There are years like that where it just seems like it's just go, go, go. And I mean, even this year, this is our first year in the Big 12. And so I felt like I was always just, what can we do? How can I help? What can we do to be better and to show up in the Big 12, which is a huge step from our mid-major conference to this conference now, and wanting to put on and do well
Yeah.
in our inaugural season, right? And so, I definitely felt like this year was probably more stress than I've ever been, but only because I wanted my athletes to see
Yeah.
that this is what we've been preaching when we were in the mid-major conference. Like we're operating as a Power Five. Now we're here. Let's see what we can do. So it was not so much stress as all we have to do well, but stress in the sense that I know that we're here and that we're going to be successful. And I just need to make sure that I'm doing my best to give them the best opportunity.
Yeah. That's like that's the hardest part. There's so many, and you see it 10x of like probably more than me, but like having conversations, I'm just like, if you saw what I saw in you.
Exactly. I have those conversations monthly. I mean, because as coaches, you see it. Like you see what they're doing, you see the potential, but it's sometimes the light bulb goes off year one, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years, but hopefully we get to the sense where that light bulb is coming on. Like we never want that light bulb to stay off.
Yeah, yeah. There was one, I can think of a conversation with an athlete, and I just point blank, I was like, just from a sheer competitor, I was like, if I could be you, I would trade. Like, I would trade. And she was like,
Mhm.
you wrestled at West Virginia. I was like, I'd still trade, right? Like, you have no idea, like, your talent, skills, abilities, athletic potential. I was like, the
Right.
moment you see it, it's gonna be scary because I see it. But the moment,
Amen. Yes. You're just like, you just want to shake it, like, why can't you see this? But that's our job is that we have to continue to show up and we have to continue to show them.
And
So
I think that that's again, I think that going back like kind of full circle of like why identity is so important to me because when you can see your value as a person, it's like, oh my God, it's going to be so scary,
oh
right?
yeah,
Because the if you can see it from a humanistic standpoint, then like
right.
just translating that over into like a sport, right? That's gonna be 10 times easier.
Oh yeah.
Because so many I think just young adults, right, is
Mhm.
I think struggle with that kind of like buzz phrase, but like identity crisis, right? It's like the
Mhm.
ultimate question, like, who are you? And they're like, what do you want to know? And I'm like, anything.
Yeah, yeah. And you also, as a coach, like you also have to put it in the perspective of, this is something that you get to do. Like this
Yeah.
isn't the only thing, and this isn't only who you are. You are this person outside of the pool. You are a leader. You love your family. You're a great friend. Whatever the characteristics may be. Like this sport is a great sport because you're able to put time in, but also remember that you do have a life,
Yeah.
and you will have a life once this is over. And what is that life going to look like? Because once that identity of being a swimmer or being a diver goes away, who are you going to be?
Yeah.
So it's also our job to kind of teach them, or not teach them, but help remind them of who they are because their parents did a great job before they came here. So it's not something that we actually have to do. It's just continuing on what their parents instilled in them over the 17 years that they are with them. That hey, this is a person that your parents say that you are, and you are this person. And once you leave this person, continue to be that person. Don't change for anybody.
Yeah. 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 And then I think it's of because I think a large part of like who we are our beliefs. And then
Mhm.
I think those are shaped and molded early on from parents, teachers, coaches, church, whoever those influential environments are within
Right.
our lives. And then I think it's just making sure, I think a lot of my conversations, it's, I say challenging them in the way of like making sure that that's what they want to believe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the example I always give is like, if you tell me you believe in God and I go, why? And you go, because my parents made me go to church on Sundays. That's probably not an ideal reason, right? Like you
Right.
should uncover. And so I say it does one of two things. It makes you either it's going to hardwire that belief even more because you're going to like uncover that. You're gonna be like, why do I? Okay,
Yeah.
so like this is okay, like I really believe that. Or it's going to be like maybe I don't believe this kind of type
Right.
thing. And so it's like I think that we just learn more about ourselves of like it's kind of like the why question, just challenging like, why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? I know I get on my wife's nerves because she thinks I'm like super judgmental. I'm like, why do you do this? And she's like, why are you so judgy? I'm like, I'm not being judgy. I'm genuinely curious. I'm like, why do you do this?
Yeah. Yeah. Just get a perspective. Yeah, for sure.
um, so going back to like when you first came in, you talked about like there was already a good foundation, there was already a good culture kind of in place. So I guess was the transition from like previous coaches like to you, was that did that make it easier or was that more difficult because like did you just like piggyback off of like what that culture was or was it like hey like we're really going to mix things up and here's like foundation, I know you guys have had success but like I
Mhm.
think we can be even better than that and this is the way that
Mhm.
we're going to go, like how was that kind of like transitional period?
I think I would, in all honesty, if I would be a little remiss if I would say that it went perfect because it did not. I think with any change, there's going to be some growing pains.
Yeah,
And
totally.
we definitely had some of those growing pains in our first couple of seasons here. But if there was any advice or anything that I could give to the, incoming head coaches, just stick to your beliefs.
Yeah.
You were hired for a reason. The characteristics of a strength that you portrayed during your interview should be the same characteristics that you take to your team.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've kind of been steadfast with is just my belief of where I want this program to go, how we're going to get there, and recruiting athletes that believe in that. And so the foundation was, coming into a program that was already successful, winning 5 conference championships prior to my arrival. We wanted to continue that, obviously. But there are some steps that have to go with that.
Yeah.
First year we won our conference championship by 0.5 point. The next year we was 11.5 points, so it was a little bit more of a gap.
Yeah.
So it's just like, so there's already that expectation that's placed on us that we're going to continue that, but it's hard to get there. It's not easy to win championships. Every year is going to be a reset year because you have new members coming into the team. You have members that are leaving the team. You have members who you thought you would have for multiple seasons who decide that, hey, this isn't a place for me, and they go somewhere else, which is fine. Because I want our student athletes, whether you stay with us or not, to find their happiness.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what matters the most. But for the foundational, kind of groove that we're in right now is, one of the things that I talked about a little bit earlier is that, we are building a legacy here. We are growing into a program to where, I want to be in that conversation that we're in that top 15 nationally. We could potentially get to being in the top 10. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, but the athletes that we bring in season out and season out, and the athletes that we have season in and season out, that's what's going to matter. It's not so much of, we have to win. It's why can't we win?
Right.
We
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
resources that are available. We have a facility that, is top notch. We have athletes who are determined, who want to grind, who want this as much as we do. And that's what's going to eventually pan out. But it does take time, and it kind of goes back to, when you're talking about our children and having that patience.
Hey.
I have to be patient as a head coach too, because there are steps that come into that. Like, we're
Yeah.
not just going to go from, point A to point Z in a year. It's going to take multiple seasons. But again, if you're looking at athlete base, that's what's fun about it. As a coach base, that's what's fun about it. That, how we do season in, season out, what changes that we make, who do we add to our program, what did we fight for? How
Mm-hmm.
do we fight? Are we continuing to fight? Did we take a step back? And that's just I get geeked out about this kind of stuff because, when you're looking back in a season or a time frame of, of success, well, how do we get there? And
Yeah.
how do we improve on that? How do we get more out of our athletes who had like these phenomenal breakthrough seasons? Can we do it again next year? How do we help that athlete who may not have had a successful season? How do we motivate her to be better the next season? So it's always these puzzle pieces that you're putting together. And sometimes you're missing a couple pieces, sometimes all the pieces fit. But it's the fun and, finding that missing piece and putting it together and having that successful season. So
Yeah.
it's just all those things. I mean, and success can be defined not by championship, it can be defined by, the progress that each individual made.
Mm-hmm.
It can be
Mm-hmm.
defined by how our team did academically. It can be defined by a wide variety of things. So it's not so much always about championships, but it's how you did that season, how each individual walked away from that season. Was every athlete happy? Were there a lot of tears? Were there a lot of disappointment? So success to me is wrapped up in a lot of variables, not just like one cornerstone of, oh, we are successful because we won. That's, to me, that's not success, because anyone who has championship rings or medals, you don't just walk around with their trophies day in,
Yeah.
day out.
Yeah.
Like, they're sitting somewhere, they're sitting on a desk, they're sitting, in a box. Like, you don't pull those out, you don't look at them on a daily basis, but it's what you carry within you that is going to matter the most when you walk away from that season. And I don't know, sorry, kind of went off on a tangent, but I get geeked out about talking about coaching. I get geeked out about talking about student athletes and how we're being able to be supportive. So
Yeah, no, I love because I think that when you're kind of touching, two things come to mind. It's like, well, as you're talking about like what success means, it kind of goes back to the clarity conversation, right? Like, what does this look like for us? It's like, I can ask every team. It's like, what's your dream outcome this year? Well, like, of course, everyone would, as a team, would want to win a national
Right.
title, right? But I'm like, do
Mhm.
you guys actually believe, like, do you, in your heart of hearts, believe that you'll win a national title this year? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, then that's not the dream outcome because you're not going to be that person, right? You're not going
Right.
to go, you don't understand that yet. And that's
Mhm.
okay.
Right.
But let's get clarity on like what success looks like for this team this year. And
Right.
let's go live that and grow from there. To your
Exactly.
point of like, I'm probably not going to go from 80th to a national championship. I mean,
Right.
theoretically, I guess I could, but like most of these people in the room, they don't believe that. So they're not going to be determined to show up and do the things that are
Mhm.
required to do that.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
I love that because I think that's why I guess it's almost I don't know if they're interchangeable or probably used together, but honest clarity, right?
Mhm.
Like I think
Mhm.
there's a level of honesty that has to be talked about because again, everyone wants to win a national title, but like
Right.
you don't you don't believe it yet.
Right.
So
No,
it's
I agree. I mean, I had these conversations with my student athletes on a yearly basis that unfortunately or fortunately, you have a coach who is straightforward. I don't sugarcoat a lot of things because at this stage, you are here because this is your choice. This isn't your parents' choice. This isn't, something that you have to do. This is a choice that you want to do. And so in that, we have to, as a coaching staff, as academics, all the things, support staff, we have to give you and show you the truth. Um,
Mhm.
because or you're not going to grow. I think that if you're looking at the scope of our collegiate athletics, Division 1, Division 2, or 3, there are things that are just provided to our student athletes, which is phenomenal. The resources I talked about before, but it's our job to get the best performance out of you. And so the only way we can do this is by having this honest conversation. That hey, maybe we could have been better this in this point of the season, or hey, you didn't quite put in the work that is needed for the end result that you wanted. And those are tough conversations. I don't like having them, but I don't want my athletes to think that their coach doesn't care or
Yeah.
that she only tells me what I want to hear. I
Yeah.
can't be that coach because that's not going to be reality when you leave this place. And so obviously there's a mixture of saying it with grace and saying it with humility. You can't just like, hey, you need to do this, but
Suck.
yeah, I would never say that, but I hope I wouldn't say it, but there has to be a point of honesty
Yeah.
that each the coaches and the athlete can have to where we're at an understanding of okay, we did this well or we did not do this well, and I'm
Mhm.
going to make changes for the future.
Yeah. The analogy I because without honesty, I don't believe you have a starting point, right? Like
Mm.
if I give you some false hope or false belief, it's like
Right,
you're not even starting at the right place. And so
right.
I always ask the analogy, like kind of having those conversations. I'm like, when you go to punch in Google Maps and you want to go somewhere, what's the first thing you punch in? And like 90% of the time they'll go to destination. I'm like, no, 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 no. What's the first line? And they're like, your current location. I'm like, exactly. So we have to
Mm.
know where we are. That is step one because
Ooh, I love that.
if you want to go to Chick-fil-A, but like you use my Morgantown, West Virginia address, that's not helping you out at all, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
and so this is like, okay, this is why we have to be honest right now. And this is
Mm.
why some of the things I'm going to tell you might sting, but that's
Mhm.
okay because we want to get to our destination. And that
Right.
is being a top five, being a top 10, being a champ, like whatever the thing is, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love like it makes me think of going back to your like how do we continue to grow and puzzle this together is I felt like I needed that and so um I feel like I'd love to get your opinion on this too is I feel like some of the harder not that they're more difficult, they're just strategically harder or kind of like the end of the year of like what went well, what didn't go well and so again, kind of like my own performance review is I have a buddy that was he was an Army Ranger. And so I was like, hey, like when you guys go on missions, like you guys do like reports after he's like literally I was like, can I pay you to like literally just type me up like how you guys did that? And he was like, sure, whatever. Right. And so like literally they're called like after action reviews
Okay.
And so it's like I like now have this structure again, like continue to grow because I felt like that's like an area that I lacked in,
Right.
right? And I feel like that, at least for me personally, is like the harder conversations of like getting the right answers because it's like what you want to happen. Well, we wanted to win. Why didn't you? Because they were better. And I'm like, all right, we didn't get anywhere. So like
Yeah.
having some structure like behind that.
Mhm.
Yeah, then so yeah. Is that for you again, when I say harder, just from a clarity standpoint, or what are some of the harder ones that like I guess for you as a coach? And I got one more question, we'll wrap it up.
Sure. So harder in the sense of like the recap of the season, like an individual performance or athlete performance.
I think a little bit of both. I think
Okay.
that for me, it's like drawing out the real answers, not just
Mhm.
the like, oh, here you go. We didn't
Right.
win. Well, why? Because we weren't good enough. Like, okay, that doesn't help us go anywhere. Or it could be goal setting, right? Is that harder for you guys to like get the real honest answers?
Mhm.
I guess for you, what are kind of like if you had to I view it as like a spectrum, right? Some things just
Right.
flow a little more naturally. It's like, hey, we're really good at that. Like mission, like we're good. Like that takes
Yeah.
30 minutes every year and we just rock and roll through that thing.
Mhm.
Versus like for me, it's like kind of the end of the year reviews. That's a struggle for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not so sure that, we have like a strict guideline of what we normally do, but, me as an individual and, when you look at back at the season, what we look for, what I look for is, you know, first thing is how do our athletes perform? Did we
Mm,
have, our goal is to have everyone go at least one best time in one of their events every season. Did we do that? How do we place overall? Did we get any athletes to nationals? All those things. How do we perform academically? It's just a lot of encompassing things. And if I'm looking back in this season and doing a grade report of myself, I would think we're probably like a
hmm
B minus, from my point of view of how I could have done and, be better. But I'm pretty hard on myself anyways. And so, that's actually probably a higher grade than I would normally give myself. Even though we had success,
Yeah,
because we did have some athletes who were not as successful. And so it's like, well, what could I have done? And the training that we do, how could I have motivated those athletes to do more? Was I present? All these different things, and if I would give my honest grade, it would be much lower than B minus. But you have to put in, how we perform. So that's why I said B minus. So we got second. But um, again, it goes back to being humble, right? And having that humility that, hey, maybe I didn't do as well as I could have. I didn't
yeah,
help lead my student athletes the way that I wanted to this season. I need to do this differently. Or I did a great job. I don't think I ever walked away with the season saying that. Just because I'm just, but I shouldn't say hard on myself. It's just I want to be my very best year in and year out for my student athletes. And so as a team, we did phenomenal. As a coach, I could have done better.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's in the hour that I've known you.
Mhm.
There's a quote that stood out to me, and it's like I say this of like why I know that like you're going to excel and be great. And the quote was like you can tell, and I forget the exact word. You can tell great leaders, or you can tell high achievers, something along those lines. You can tell high achievers from when they take ownership when things are bad and how little credit they give themselves when things are good. And I think that like that kind of like it sounds like you really embody that and I wholeheartedly believe that because I think that I had a coach tell me it's like I to you. He was like, when bad things come, right? It's like it's I, right? And when good things happen, it's you, right? So it's
Right,
like I to you, I to you, I to you. And so
right.
it sounds like that's a lot of like who you are like as a person. And I think
Mhm.
that that's what again continues to like knock the big dominoes over, right? That you can take these bigger leaps. Maybe it doesn't happen overnight, but they're jumps, right? They're
Mhm.
leaps. And they're not just little baby steps to help you get there along the way. And so, yeah, because I think of it too as like, especially somebody like you know that could have performed at a high level and they don't, it's like the first question you're like, okay, like what did I do? Right? Like
Right,
even though I wasn't in the water or on the
right,
mat or on the floor or on the court or on the field or
right.
whatever it is, it's like, okay, like should I have told them this or should I have told them this? Should I
Mhm.
not send that text message? Should I send this text message?
Yeah.
Like
Let me, yeah, and I don't know if it's good or bad. That's just kind of how I operate, but I just want it so bad for them, and
totally.
I think you want to have that head coach, right? Or that coaching staff that wants it so badly for you, for every member that's on our team. And that's why we coach, like
Yeah.
because we love our sport. We love what we do, and we want to see them successful, not so much for the individual accolades that it comes with, i.e., being the coach, but just to see that smile, to see that hard work pay off, to know what you've done on a day in and day out basis, and it's just that's the joy. That's the
Yeah.
joy when it comes to being a coach. Watching my daughter learn how to read, watching her how to ride a bike. Being able to hit the ball off the tee. I mean that's the fun of it. Just seeing the growth. That's why I coach. I love watching growth. I love watching my student athletes succeed. And I love getting those invitations to go to their weddings, years down the road,
Yeah.
because you leave that mark, you
Yeah.
have an impact on their life, and that's just it's just that reassuring that, hey, you did something good for somebody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. Last question. I didn't
Sure.
set you up for this one like the first one.
Okay.
Um, so if you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you
Okay.
could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
Oh. To be the best you that you can be. There's only one you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Because I think somebody, I'm stealing this from somebody, they started to say, instead of being one of one, be one of zero, right? Like be one of like there is nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what makes me think of that because I do think that yeah, we're all unique like in our own ways and bring our own like gifts and talents, and it's like
Yeah.
be that uniqueness. And it makes me think of like when you're talking about being a coach, of like as you interviewed, making sure that that person is the same person, because I think we can get so caught up, whether it's being people pleasing or trying to fit in with a new group of like I want to be liked, I want them to like listen to me, and so it's like keeping narrow minded in the sense of like knowing like who you are. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we will wrap things up. Until next time, everybody. Peace.